Caleb Williams is going to be picked apart more than any player in this draft. Where are you on Caleb?
Personally, from the college point of view, I thought it was laughable that people were looking at USC as a potential competitor for the national championship.
This is Sharp Money with Patrick Meagher on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We're going to welcome in Tony Pauline. It's always draft season post-Super Bowl. Consulting editor, NFL draft analyst at sportskeeda.com, has a great mock draft up. And I want to ask you, first off, Tony, thank you for joining us. I know it's been a busy few weeks for you. Shrine Bowl in Texas, the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. Spencer Rattler, can we start there? MVP of the Senior Bowl, the South Carolina quarterback. Were you impressed, Tony?
You know, I think Spencer Rattler, the one I saw at the Senior Bowl, is indicative of the Spencer Rattler it's been in South Carolina, in the sense that he wows you, with a throw here and there, and then there'll be a couple of passes where you just scratch your head and you wonder what's going on. I mean, the guy has all the ability in the world. It's just that there's too much inconsistency in his game, in the long haul. That's why he lost out to Caleb Williams. That's why he's probably going to be a late day 3 pick. A lot of ability there, but just not a lot of consistency.
Tony, I'm going to ask you to think back to mock drafts of the past. And let's talk about Patrick Mahomes. He's now entered that greatest of all time conversation. Coming out of Texas Tech, what were your thoughts?
I thought he had great physical skills. He had all the great arm talent. Obviously, the bloodlines were there in the athleticism because of his father. He was very rough around the edges. He needed a lot of development in his game. And I think two things happened for Patrick Mahomes that have put him in the position where he is today. Number one, Andy Reid selecting him was like manna from heaven because, it's as much about who the quarterback coach is, who can develop the quarterback, as it is the quarterback with the great skills. And the fact that Andy Reid sat him for a year, I think those two things have really helped, foster the development of the Patrick Mahomes that we see today.
Tony Pauline, Sportskeeda NFL draft analyst at Tony Pauline. If you like the NFL, which all of you do, give him a follow on Twitter as we get closer and closer to the draft. Now, I want to ask you about your mock. You've got Caleb going 1. When it comes to Jaden going 2 to Washington and Drake May going 3 to New England, Tony, is that your scouting or is that what you believe the teams will do?
A little bit of both. I think, with Cliff Kingsbury in Washington, Jaden Daniels is a better fit. And on my overall board, Jaden Daniels is my number 2 quarterback ahead of Drake May. He doesn't have the same physical stature, although he has an arm that's equal to Drake May. But when you look at Jaden Daniels the past year and a half at LSU, his game has just incredibly developed. It's taken off. He showed flashes. He showed that Spencer Rattler-esque type game at Arizona State where he was athletic. He'd make a couple of great throws, and then you would wondering, what happened with the next 4 or 5 passes. But at LSU the past year and a half, I mean, this guy, he gets it between the ears. He's got great vision. He's done a tremendous job to commanding and controlling that offense. He doesn't make bad passes. He knows what's going on the field. And he's as legitimate a threat picking up yardage with his legs as he is making big plays with his arm. The thing with Jaden Daniels is he's a smaller guy. He's not a great pocket pass. He's not a huge pocket passer, although he plays well from the pocket. There's some questions as how is he going to hold up against the rush in the NFL? When he runs, you don't want him being reckless because it could lead to a lot of injuries. But I think he's really much more polished than Drake May. I think you can make the argument that 2 or 3 years down the road, Drake May be a better passer, maybe a better NFL quarterback than Jaden Daniels because of the physical skills, because of the physical stature. But you look at Jaden Daniels, and I like quarterbacks whose game is on the upswing. And Jaden Daniels' game has been on the upswing literally for almost 24 months now.
Tony Pauline joining us talking the NFL draft. Tony, this is what you do for a living, so I'm not on that level, but I'm going to tell you what I saw from Drake May at North Carolina. Now, prototypical size, but he is being talked about as a generational talent, and I got to be honest, Tony, I literally don't see it. I think he's got a good arm. It's not overly exceptional. I didn't think the accuracy was out of control. I understand the athleticism's there. What am I missing when I see Drake May?
Well, it depends on when you watch them. I understand what you're saying if you watch Drake May late in the 2023 season, because as the season progressed at North Carolina, he was getting, for lack of a better word, the snot beat out of him. And he was, he turned from a guy who was making, good passes, good decisions, accurate throws, to someone who was trying to do too much because he was getting pummeled because they couldn't protect him. You had the whole situation with Quantez Walker, in the beginning of the season, didn't have great skill players, didn't have great receivers targets there last year. He's not as developed, and it was an up and down season. But when you look at the skill, you look at the size, you look at the arm strength, and he's not an immobile pocket passer. He's a guy that can elude defenders, pick up yardage with his legs. There's a lot of upside there, but he's not the polished prospect, which is why he's my number 3 quarterback right now.
Tony Pauline, Sportskeeda. He's got the draft full mock up there. Go check it out at Tony Pauline on Twitter, joining us here on Sharp Money, presented by DraftKings. Tony, I'm here in L.A. USC's offensive front and defensive front were sibs last year. Caleb Williams is going to be picked apart more than any player in this draft. I'm sure you saw it. He wore a dress, so people get up in arms about it. I got to be honest, I don't care about any of it. I want to talk about the player. Where are you on Caleb?
He's a dynamic personality on the field and off the field. He's a real leader. He's a playmaker. He makes those off-platform throws. He's been an incredibly productive quarterback on the college level under Lincoln Riley, who has developed some decent quarterbacks for the next level. I think what you're going to hear about Caleb Williams is, number one, he's not really big, and you're going to hear a lot of concern about his fundamentals. He's an arm thrower. A lot of times he doesn't set his feet. He doesn't throw the ball with proper footwork, which is a concern, because what happens is a lot of the throws that he was able to make on Saturday, not being fundamentally sound, going to be a little bit more difficult to make on Sunday. People will talk about how his game tailed off, but you look at USC in 2022 versus USC in 2023. They were a completely different team. Personally, from the college point of view, I thought it was laughable that people were looking at USC as a potential competitor for the national championship. They never were going to be that. I mean, 2023, USC was basically a one-man show, and it was Caleb Williams, where the year before they had a lot of good skill players, they had a decent offensive line. So, and you're right, he's going to be talked about more than anyone else. It's a dynamicism that we've seen on the field, the playmaking ability, the ability to lead the offense, which I think separates him from the other two quarterbacks.
That's a great scout, Tony, because you watch him and you worry about the way he sets his feet, but you also watch Caleb and you feel like you're watching innately something special. Like somebody that almost has an instinct for the position that you can't teach.
And it's ironic that you started off the quarterback conversation with Spencer Rattler, because what happened when Spencer Rattler had his problems at Oklahoma? Who came in and replaced him? Caleb Williams, and his game took off because, in large part, Lincoln Riley, and he's just gotten better and better and more productive.
Is Marvin Harrison Jr., is he far and away the best wide receiver in this class, or is he simply the best wide receiver in this class?
I think he's the best player in this draft, period. He is definitely the best receiver in this draft, although Malik Neighbors of LSU is a very good receiver. But when you look at Marvin Harrison, you look at the body of work, you look at the body of Marvin Harrison, the bloodlines, the fact that, last year he played with a very mediocre quarterback at best, yet when they threw him the ball, he couldn't be stopped. You look at what he did against Penn State. He's not super fast, but he's sneaky fast. He runs solid routes for a bigger receiver. He's got soft, natural hands. So he's not only the best receiver in this draft. I think as you get closer to the draft, people that you rely on will tell you he is the best player in this draft.
Tony, that's a great start to draft season. We look forward to talking to you more as the draft gets closer. Sportskeeda.com. You want to go check out the mock draft at Tony Pauline on Twitter. It's a busy time for you. Thank you for a few minutes. Appreciate it, Tony.
Thanks for having me.